Hello, vinyl community. Records that mean so much to me. A record that touches my heart, that embodies everything I love about music, that just touches my soul. This is a video of one of those records, inspired by the great Reverend Rock and Rollin', another man who is dressed for success and who is taking a little sabbatical between projects. He is in the vinyl community. You should be subscribing to him. I will put a link below to his channel. And he has requested that while he's on the move, while he's traveling, that we just come and show that one record, not our favorite record necessarily. I probably have hundreds and hundreds of records that really just make me feel so good and just touch a nerve every time I listen. So I'm going to show you one of those. He didn't want to see, like, here's the new shit I got this week. Here's the new shit I got last week. Here's the stuff that showed up in the mail. Not quantities, but quality, that one record. I have a feeling this introduction is going to be even longer than the heartfelt presentation of that one record. Now, Macchiato, I just did another video showing myself drinking a macchiato in the afternoon. Again, it's shot of espresso, 1 or 2 shots, could be a dopia, but 1 shot of espresso with little dollop of foam. I've had these for, God, over 20 years. These set of espresso cups from Il Cafe. This particular series are designed by Francis Ford Coppola. Yes, that Francis Ford Coppola. A filmmaker, American, Italian-American, Godfather, Godfather 2, Godfather 3, Rumblefish, Finian's Rainbow, so many other amazing films. Apocalypse Now. I would show you the little stamp of Francis Coppola, but then I would turn this over and it would spill all down my coat here. So after I have this, I'm going to present that record to you. Grafeo espresso beans dark roast from San Francisco, North Beach, and San Rafael, Northern California, Marin County. I'm going to showcase this record that means a lot to me. Now, I would say it's from my hometown, San Francisco, but it's not. It's actually from the East Bay, band from Oakland, California, but one of the first early psychedelic bands. In 1967, Country Joe and the Fish put out 2 albums. The first one, Electric Music for the Mind and Body, and 7 months later, November of 1967, they put out this album, Country Joe and the Fish, I Feel Like I'm Fixin' to Die. This record seriously means a lot to me, even more than the first, although the first is probably technically the better San Francisco psychedelic album. This is a more mature album. This gets into, I think, better songwriting maybe, and I would argue that Country Joe McDonald was probably the best singer, the best voice of all the Summer of Love, San Francisco 67, 68, 69 bands of the period. Folk singer, all the members except for Country Joe were Jewish. Produced by Samuel Charters. Sam Charters produced, I think, the first 4 or 5 Country Joe and the Fish albums, the main albums, all the great albums. And Sam Charters is a special one, and I got into him, went back after the fact and studied him. Musicologist, teacher, producer. He's the one that went and brought early blues players. He was on the search for Robert Johnson. Just an amazing musicologist and produced these albums. So he came from this whole blues, jazz period and worked with this great rock and roll band, Country Joe and the Fish. The opening track, I Feel Like I'm Fixin' to Die, was an old standard song that Joe wrote new lyrics for. Of course, it became even more famous the next year or 2 years after this in Woodstock, the film Woodstock, where he changes the opening, the fish cheer, give me an FICH2 FUCK in Woodstock on that, and it became a massive success. One of the biggest anti-Vietnam War protest songs ever in the history. But this is such a beautiful album. There is a song that opens up side two, just a beautiful ballad vocal love song called Janis, and it was written, of course, about Janis Joplin, his beautiful voice. He had dated Janis for a while, and they were friends in the music community in the Bay Area, of course, because of the Fillmore shows and the Avalon Ballroom shows. Ironically, on the first album, the final track is a song called Grace, which is about Grace Slick. So they wrote of the two most famous women of the San Francisco psychedelic rock scene, the great Janis Joplin and the great, obviously, Grace Slick as well. The second track, Who Am I, is one of the most haunting vocals and one of those beautiful vocals probably that Joe ever sang. One of the first rock and roll groups signed to Vanguard Records, obviously a blues and folk label, and this is just a gorgeous record. There's Eastern Jam on here, which is very in that raga rock that was happening in 1967 and 68, the whole Eastern thing that I remember. I think it started in 1966 with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, East West. Fantastic album in its own right. There's something about this record too, and I got this album right when it came out. And it came with, of course, I replaced my original copy because I actually played with my buddies the Fish game. It comes with a free full color Fish game. So not only musically, but we'd spin this record all the time. We'd pull out the Fish game. We'd cut out the cards. And just, it was fun. I was 13 years old when this record came out. Can you imagine that? 13 years old in San Francisco listening to this wonderful, wonderful music. It's really well recorded. It sounds good. Again, the first album they did is more psychedelic. But this one, I think, songwriting-wise, song for song, is the better written and better sung album. But of course, what a great album and a great band. Chicken Hirsch was the drummer, a nice Jewish gentleman. Barry Melton, of course. Barry Melton had this really unique lead guitar sound, very staccato, very Eastern, had Eastern sort of note patterns, not Western progressions of note progressions, very Eastern sounding, influenced by obviously Ravi Shankar on the raga stuff. That was happening not just in the Bay Area, but obviously because of the Beatles, with George Harrison bringing that the sitar in. But he had a really unique sound. He later became a judge in the East Bay or maybe Northern Marin or something, and still occasionally plays to this day. Bruce Barthol on bass, David Cohen on the keyboards, and as I said, Chicken Hirsch on drums. So there's your Magician, there's the whole Country Joe McDonald as the Bandito. I don't know how politically correct that is these days, but these guys were the real deal. Just love this record to pieces. It brings a lot of emotion, a lot of sense memory back to 1967 into 1968. You have the Fillmore, you got the Avalon, you got all these great places in San Francisco. Leo's Music Store, Moe's Bookstore, the Jabberwock, the Bridge Toll, Lose 1 Point. Just great places that I remember. I think you have the Print Mint on here, which was on Haight Street, the poster place. So the Panhandle, Golden Gate Park. I lived off the Panhandle. I was born on the tip of the Haight-Ashbury. Acid Trip. Take 2 extra turns, of course. Take a full trip there. Drugstore Cafe. Radio Interview, Say Something Unique. Denny and the Bonsai Squad. TV station Be Visual. Napa, you lose the game. Napa wasn't really the wine country quite yet in the same way. Napa, the wine country, was more famous for Napa State, the And I say this as it was called a mental ward at the time, so in the 1960s. So I just want to, for the Rev, he wanted us to talk about an album that means a lot. Now, this is not my favorite album of all time, but it's certainly up there. And it's really a wonderfully important record in my growth in music. And it reminds me of home and a really wonderful time in my childhood and my early teenage years, where I was playing music with my band and we started doing long ass jams. We realized around late 1966, 67, we could find a song. I remember we did For What It's Worth, the Buffalo Springfield song. We started playing it. We realized we could jam on it for 10 minutes. You didn't really know that before East West, before the first Quicksilver Messenger Service, Jefferson Airplane, obviously the live album especially, that's later, 68. All these great bands, Quicksilver especially, that first album on Capitol Records. Colors for Susan, Thursday, Magoo, Rock Coast Blues, blues, psychedelic, Eastern sounds, folk. A fantastic band, Country Joe and the Fish. This is a must for any collection, and I'm recommending it because that's what I do here, and I love this record to pieces, so I suggest you pick up a copy if you see it. Berkeley, California's finest, Oakland, East Bay, Vanguard Records, Country Joe and the Fish, I Feel Like Fixin' to Die, VSD 79255, stereo copy. Thank you for watching. Mazzy loves you.